So, should you end up attending business school, you might cover a concept called change management, which basically says that our little lizard amygdala brains respond very negatively to change normally. And we respond especially negatively if it is a surprise and if it is something that feels like it was trying to be sort of hidden or snuck past us, right? So, unfortunately, the introduction or the news about this new business writing assessment, unfortunately, was rolled out in a way that anyone who took change management in an MBA program would know is, oh no, not the right way to do it, because it sort of felt like it was sprung on all of us out of nowhere, not really trumpeted, right? It's sort of like you kind of had to accidentally find it. It felt like, so, oh my gosh, for all these reasons, that's why I think people started to freak out. I was one of them. When I first heard about this, I thought, what is happening? But there are a couple of qualitative reasons to not freak out about this business writing assessment. And then I'm also, in a few minutes, I'm going to take a stab at trying to do a quick back of the envelope calculation of, okay, so how many people is this actually going to impact? Like, how exactly what number of people is it? At least can we guess, given what little information we have right now? So, a couple of things, reasons not to freak out. First of all, not everyone is going to be asked to do it. So right off the bat, just because you're applying to HBS or MIT Sloan doesn't mean you'll have to do it. So there's no reason to really freak out about it yet, because you haven't been asked to do it yet. So why use up that mental stress? Life is stressful enough, guys, right? Whew. Okay. So should you be asked to do it? That means that you made it to the interview stage. Congratulations. That probably means you're pretty smart. And if you're pretty smart, the analytical writing assessment is not going to be that difficult for you. It should be pretty easy. So take that for what it's worth. It's fast. It's not like a huge amount of time of your life. You can do it refreshed. So before, when it was part of the overall GMAT, you would still have the rest of the test hanging over your head, right? So at least now you're taking it alone, so you don't have anything else kind of taking up that headspace or that cognitive energy. You can focus entirely on this. It's only $30. Now, admittedly, I understand why they're charging the $30. I think that they probably have a marginal cost associated with each time they give the test, right? If there is a live proctor there watching you to make sure you're not cheating, that's probably a fixed cost per test. I do think it feels a little bit like a misstep, only because people who signed up to take the test at the time were not told or had any inclination that they might have to incur this additional fee later. To the extent that it's not the test taker's fault, it does feel a little like not great from a PR, public relations, candidate goodwill perspective to charge it on them. Anyone who signs up immediately, as soon as it became public knowledge, from this date forward, anyone who signs up for the GMAT focus, go ahead, charge them the $30. Knock yourself out. But because it sort of feels like, oh wait, I wasn't told about this and now what? It feels a little uncool, but at the same time, I understand why they're doing it. For what it's worth, given how much you're already spending to get into business school, or put it another way, given how much an acceptance would mean to you, how excited you'd be, what's an extra $30? So for those reasons, and I think, but honestly, the biggest reason to not be freaked out about it is that it's probably not a difficult writing assessment, because the analytical writing assessment was not difficult. So especially if you really are HBS material in particular, it's not going to be a problem for you. Okay, so how many people is this announcement even going to impact, right? I decided to do a quick back of the envelope caveat. Let me throw 4,000 million trillion caveats around. There is so much information we don't have yet. I am recording this on a Friday night at the end of July. So the news of this BWA has only been out for about a week. But I also thought, well, I'm going to have to make a lot of assumptions, but why not? Let's take a stab at it and see how it goes. So let's assume because so far MIT has really not been clear on what their criteria will be, we'll ignore MIT for now. Let's only look at HBS. So about 8,000 applicants to HBS last year. Let's assume that half of them are round one, half of them are round two. If it's going to be the same this year, let's assume there are going to be 4,000 applicants to HBS in this upcoming round one. We know from last year's student profile of the entering class from last year, at least, that 69% of those people took the GMAT. Let's just keep that assumption the same. That means 2,760 applicants will be submitting GMAT tests. Of those, approximately 20% of them, we can assume, will be invited to interview. The reason how you get to that number, by the way, is that the usual rule of thumb for most business schools is that after you get interviewed, it's about a 50-50% acceptance rate. HBS, anecdotally, through the grapevine, it might be a smidge higher than 50%. So if we're talking about a 10 to 12% acceptance rate, just double that, a little bit less than double that. So 20-25%. I'm comfortable with the 20% assumption. So that leaves us with, of the 4,000 applicants to HBS in round one, 552 will be invited to interview and will have submitted a GMAT. Now, of those 552, I'm going to make an assumption that about 87% of them were educated at a university where the primary language of instruction, as in basically all of the classes, with the exception of the foreign language classes, the primary language of instruction was English. And how did I come up with that number? This is where the assumptions start kicking in more and more. So basically, like, the further down we go, like when we start at the top, those are more concrete numbers, and then as we go further down and down and down, like with each step, we're adding in more assumptions. But here's how I got to that number. 61% of last year's class were U.S. citizens. So let's assume that all of those U.S. citizens attended a university that was in the English language. Is that true? Or did maybe some of them decide to go to Japan and do their entire education? Sure, I'm sure that there are outliers here and there. But even when U.S. citizens study abroad, they often tend to go to, say, St. Andrews, or they go to Imperial College in London, right? So even if they leave the U.S. for their university studies, they tend to go to English language schools. So let's just assume that all the Americans went to an English language university, which leaves us with 39% of the class being international citizens. And this is the number that I really did pull out of the air. I'm assuming that 2/3 of those international citizens attended an English language university. How did you come up with that gut feel? Can you point to the algorithm that you know? Is there a statistical? No, I have no. I got nothing for you other than simply gut feel. But let me tell you a few reasons why I'm comfortable with a number being like this. It might even actually be a smidge higher, I think. First of all, and this is a pretty small bucket, but a lot of the international students are from Canada, the UK, and Australia. So, boom, English language. Basically, all applicants from India attended a university or a college that was taught in English, at least the ones that make it to the interview stage at Harvard. A number of students who are from non-English speaking countries, many of them, even if they're citizens of another country, a lot of them who end up coming to a place like HBS actually attended college in the US or the UK. So maybe they're a citizen of Argentina, or maybe they're a citizen of, I don't know, Greece, right? But they attended a college in the UK or the US. So based on that gut feel, I think at least 2/3 of the international students are going to have to take this. So basically, 67% of the 39%, that gets to this nice little 26. 26 plus 61 makes 87, which is how I came up with the 87 number, which leads us to there are 480 people approximately in that round one bucket that will theoretically have to take this BWA, but not so fast. The new GMAT, the GMAT Focus, has only been around as the only option for the GMAT since February 1st. So I'm going to assume that for the past 7 months of test takers, that there are going to be 7 months worth of test takers at the time of the deadline who submit this new GMAT test. Now, you might say, but Maria, technically you could start taking the test last November, so what about those people? My response to that is that I think most people, even if you could take the new GMAT starting in, say, November, December, January, at that point, given how much you had studied for the old GMAT in preparation of that one, I feel like maybe not a lot of people might have taken the GMAT focus. They might have said, look, I've put so much, it's been a year, guys. It's been a year of studying. I'm just going to go with the old test and see how that goes first. So yes, you could take it as of November. I don't know that a lot of people did. And also then conversely, I would argue that because there has been so much uncertainty around the new GMAT, that perhaps since February 1st, maybe those usual numbers, maybe several people decided instead to take the GRE. So maybe there were some before February, but maybe also after February, the numbers were lower than what you would otherwise think because the GRE. So the beautiful thing about a back of the envelope calculation, or in this case, a front of the PowerPoint slide calculation, is that we got to make an assumption, and this is the assumption I'm making. So basically, it's February to HBS deadlines beginning of September. Let's call it 7 months worth of test takers. So because your scores are valid for up to 5 years, theoretically, anyone who took a test over the past 5 years could submit. So on the very lowest end, let's assume an even distribution of tests over the past 5 years, right? That is, someone who took the test 5 years ago is in this bucket of 480. Someone who took the test 3 years ago, 2 years ago, a year and a half ago are all, let's assume, sort of an even distribution across those 5 years. So 7 months worth of test takers out of the 60 months of the universe of test takers who are eligible to submit that test score. So 7 out of 60, that's 12%. 12% of 480 is 58 people. Now, realistically, not a lot of people actually applying, even though a score is valid for 5 years. Who are going to be the people who submit a score that's 5 years old? It's mostly going to be people who applied for the deferred 2+2 program. So they took the GMAT their senior year of college, and now they are regular applicants, which is a sizable chunk, to be clear, but maybe not so many. Most people tend to take the test a year or two prior to applying. Some cases they take it and then they decide, well, I was thinking of applying this year, but stuff didn't come together and my job didn't go quite as well as I had hoped, and so I'm going to push it a year. Or sometimes people take it a year in advance and then they do apply, but they don't get in. So I feel safer saying that I think that most people who actually end up applying probably have taken the test at some point over the past 2 years instead. So if that's the case, then let's say that 7 months worth of tests out of 24 months worth of test takers, that's 29%. So 29% is 140 people. I will be the first to admit that I have no idea how many people have taken the test in the past since it launched in February 1st, and what percentage of people took it versus taking the old one. I'm not sure, but in the absence of any information at all, I think this guess is as good as any. Or even if we assume that test takers everyone is submitting a test that is 1 year old or less, so then we double it? What were we talking, 280 people? I mean, so in the grand universe of things, I know that there has been a lot of conjecture. Conjecture is kind of a diplomatic way of saying panic. Because of this being sort of sprung on us, kind of like leaping at us from behind the bushes. So I understand the reaction, but at the end of the day, I don't think this is going to impact a lot of people. And why am I not talking about round 2? Well, but there's still round 2, Maria. Yeah, I have a feeling that either GMAT's going to add this back to the test, or people are just not even going to want to deal with it, and they're just going to switch to the GRE anyway, in which case that percentage, that 69% of GMAT test takers, of students getting accepted taking the GMAT, I think that, unfortunately, I regret to inform you that I do think that number is going to go down. So anyway, hopefully I have given you both qualitative and perhaps some quantitative reasons to not freak out. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.